I had to tell somebody not too long ago, if you're building a template from scratch in Excel or Word or, whatever, pick your poison if you like Google better. But if you're building that from scratch, you're probably doing something wrong.
Welcome to the Disgruntled PM podcast, your weekly therapy session for the chaotic world of project management, transforming daily frustrations into real action. Welcome, everybody. I'm Trevor, the Disgruntled PM, joined today by my guest, Casey Sprague. Casey, why don't you introduce yourself to the audience and let them know a little bit about you?
Oh, yes, Trevor, thank you for having me today. So, my name is Casey Sprague. I am the owner of a couple different things here, but the main one I want to talk about is constructive curiosity. I've been a PM for, quite a while now, served in the military, and excited to share some stories and insights.
Yeah, so let's get started here with the first burning question is you went from flying helicopters to being a PM.
Yes.
How did you start that transition?
Gosh. So the fun issues of, you get to fly a lot early in your career. And as you continue to move through, you start flying a DESK, the wonderful desk, more than you get to fly the aircraft. So as I was advancing through my career, I started to get more into project management, even in the military. So I got to do, humanitarian aid and disaster relief exercise in Japan, which was a huge project to be one of my first major things that I undertook. So that was a heck of an undertaking, which had a joint multinational component to it. So very interesting. And from there, I'm like, I kind of like this. So I kept going with it.
So let's talk a little bit about your career and kind of what you've worked on post military, because we all serve, those of us who served, we all talk about it, but let's talk about what the real world is like.
Yeah, the reality check when you first get there and you realize, okay, it is not the same regimented expectations that you're used to in uniform, no matter which branch you're in. When you go, it's basically the same thing. You put on the same uniform, you go to the same office, you do the same kind of jobs, and then every 2 to 3 years you move to somewhere else and do basically the same thing with a little bit different flavor. So we started off, it was in the middle of COVID, fully
Best time
remote.
to start, right?
Going from, a guy in the office, even my last couple of days in the military, even though it was during COVID, they're like, we're still in the office, just stay 6 feet away. Don't touch each other. Okay, great. And then I'm going fully remote. I have never met any of these people in person that I'm working with or for, and they're all globally dispersed, which you do with a little bit of that in the
Hmm.
military, but it's not your standard norm. I mean, my boss was in Arizona. The company was headquartered in one place. CEO was in a different place. So you're constantly talking to people across the US. And we even had a team in India and a team in the Middle East at one point. So you're talking to people all over the globe and they all think you know exactly as much as they do. That was probably the hardest transition for me. Where the military, it doesn't always do a great job of onboarding the new guys, but they try. Where this company is like, oh, you're new? We don't care. You know everything about this product, don't you? I've never worked
Absolutely.
I have never worked in health tech before. So it was literally a healthcare software company, and they're like, "Yeah, you know all about, patient management and Medicare and Medicaid." And I was like, "Well, I got a lot of research to do."
Yeah, I remember I took a role and it was on a experiment emerging technologies team. I started after a whole fiasco with getting me my laptop and everything. I finally get there and it's a all remote team all over the country, and my boss tells me, "All right, you got 2 weeks. You're prepping the CEO and his executive team for a meeting with a potential foreign investor. You have to learn everything there is to know about this and prep him." And it was a topic I literally had never even heard of before, never mind knew about. And so I'm just like, but that's what we do.
Oh, it is, and it blows your mind. I mean, there's been every time you transition to a new field, you have to learn. Even though leadership is leadership is leadership. I like to
Mhm.
say that because if you know how to lead, you're going to be able to figure it out. But the different industries are so vastly different. Healthcare software as opposed to learning management software, as opposed to defense contracting and automation. It's all different and they have different lingo that they use. I mean, some of the stuff is universal. People know what an API is, you understand what the cloud is, how all those different servers work. But when you get into each industry, they have their niche language, and you have to be able to figure that out very quickly, especially if you come in a leadership type position, PMO director or a experienced program manager. They think you already know it, and the team is looking to you like, why don't you know this terminology? And some companies are great. and they'll give you the benefit of, we'll give you some time to learn. Others, like you just mentioned, they want you to know it now.
Well, I mean, in this particular scenario, they knew I knew nothing, but that was just, hey, figure it out as you go. And I think that's a skill set in project management that we lose focus of is just like you said, we bounce, a generalist PM will bounce from industry to industry. But the thing that I think everyone forgets is when you bounce between industries, you take those lessons learned and that knowledge with you.
Right.
So lessons learned in healthcare, which is highly regulated, means when you go into a different industry where there's a little bit of regulation, you're like, I've seen this before.
It definitely prepares you. And I mean, I think that's something that the industry is losing right now. Because if you look at job postings out there and see the way people are putting, we want 15 years in this one particular area, which is great. You have an expert at that. But what happens if the business line shifts? What happens if, something in the market goes awry? This person doesn't have the experience to grow and adapt. They've only known one thing for their entire career.
Well, not only that, but I it's the same thing as if you take the subject matter expert or the project or the team lead and you make them the project manager. If you're wearing two hats, you can only wear one effectively if you're lucky, or you wear two equally bad hats. You
Yeah.
never really you never really excel at both because if you're the PM with the subject matter expertise, you're pushing down your team because you're going to say, "Oh, well, I already know that." And you could be eliminating perspectives that are valuable.
Absolutely. And that kind of, it echoes back to the military crossover. I know we've both seen it where you've had a fantastic NCO who would transition to, the dark side or the officer side, and they'll end up trying to still be that great, sergeant first class or staff sergeant or first sergeant, whatever it was. But that's not your job anymore. And if you're trying to
Yeah.
do that, you're stepping on the people in your team. And yeah, you definitely see that, mostly see it with development leads. If you get really deep into the dev work, when it comes to, moving on to a leadership position, you love the code too much. And then you can't get yourself away from it.
And one thing I always tell people is your PM should be the subject matter expert in project management. And if they don't know the subject that they're working on extensively, they're now a set of fresh eyes built into the project.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So why don't you talk a little bit about some of your experiences with that? Just going into those roles as fresh eyes and not knowing anything, like you said.
Goodness. So my probably one of my favorite contracts I worked on was as a government contractor for, the Navy, and I was brought in to, run a program. Basically got told, hey, you're gonna run this program. Okay, what am I doing? We're doing a warehouse automation. Okay, great. What are we doing? You don't need to worry about that. You just need to, make sure the budget and scope and everything stays going. I had to learn brand new systems because our subcontractor was doing majority of the work. We were just, the overall PM over top of it. So didn't own the team, didn't own anything except for the outcome. So that was really interesting to try to figure out what is this system. I've never done warehousing work at all before, other than the inventories you do while you're in the military, which is not warehousing or real logistics unless that's your branch. So trying to figure out, okay, what is this team doing? How do they operate? And their favorite phrase from my assistant PMs from the subcontractor were, "Oh, we got this. Don't worry about it." Like, as well as I do, that is the most dangerous thing to hear. So I'm trying to learn as much as I possibly can about the system, and they don't want to share too much about the system. The subcontractor was very private. They were a larger company that I got subcontracted through us. If government contracting is weird. If
I've been there.
Yeah, for those that don't play in that realm, you'll have a small company be the prime and you'll have a large company be the sub just because that's the way the contract works. And that's kind of what this was. So they didn't want to share a whole lot of information initially. I had to build those personal relationships and dig in. And then my favorite thing to tell them in our reviews was, explain this to me like I'm in third grade
Yep.
because I don't know what this is at all. So tell me like you would a third grader.
I always say draw it with crayons.
Yes, exactly.
But to that point, I think that's a very powerful thing I always say I lead off kickoff meetings with I'm the dumbest person in the room because my expertise is in project management. And as being a PMO man, as being a program manager or at the top of the food chain, so to speak, in that role, how did you kind of say dumb this down without losing that authority that you had as the title dictated?
So kind of like what you did there, I always try to lead with, you got to read your audience. You have to know who you're dealing with. More senior people, you have to take a different approach of, the quiet humility of please explain this to me and show your expertise. We had a lot of younger people on the team. I'm not saying that we're super old, but we're not as young as we once were. So we had a lot of 25, 22 to 26-year-olds on the team. And with them, the humility through humor worked really well. So you built them up by basically saying, "Hey, I don't know. Can you explain to me? I'm just a PM. I've never done this before." And then they get to walk you through the process that one excites them because they want to show
Mhm.
off everything that they know and everything that they can do. And by making it non-threatening, lead with a little bit of humor, get them, laughing a little bit, have a good time. You're not discrediting what you know, but you're getting them to open up.
Yeah, and my favorite is, as we've all been there, when the PowerPoint goes up and something inevitably is the wrong font or the wrong
Yeah.
spacing or anything. Somebody raises their hand to interrupt you in the middle of your presentation and says, "Oh, I see you didn't QC that." I say, "No, I built that in there to make sure you were reading it."
Just to make sure to keep you on your toes. We used to do
Exactly.
a joke. So had a colonel I worked for at one point who would get lost and start doing alphabet soup, every different
Mhm.
acronym you can think of. So we would throw in random ones to see if he would admit that it was not a real acronym. He'd be like, "Yeah, yeah, I know that one. Yeah." So just like the joke, how many could we slip in each week?
Yeah, it's kinda like the Super Troopers when they make the stop and they see how many times they can say meow.
Exactly. You got to keep staff meetings interesting somehow.
Absolutely, like, and even not just staff meetings, but project meetings. Like, I distinctly remember there was one meeting I had where I randomly put in just the funniest meme in the middle of the slide presentation, and then you wait for the room to stop laughing, and then you can keep going, but you've got their attention.
My other favorite one we did on one team I was a part of, we had certain people who would take what should be a 15 meeting and make it, a 60-minute or an hour and
Mhm.
a half. So one week we literally got red flags. Like, we basically took red pieces of, cloth, put a marble or something in there. And then what we would do is we would just gently toss it in their direction to get them to stop talking. Like, okay, we get it. You really care about this topic, but this is supposed to be a daily stand up. This is not a full on hour meeting to get in depth. So yeah, here's the flag.
That's one I've never heard before, but that's a great one.
As long as they don't have easily offendable personalities, it works out well.
Even if they do, that makes it more impactful.
Yeah. Make them think about pontificating at that point.
Well, and to that point, I think a lot of people don't realize they do it until someone tells them, and then they keep doing and then they go, "Oh," and then you've gotta have someone reinforcing that of like almost like a visual cue in the middle of a meeting to let you know, "Oh, you're rambling."
Yeah, and that's where when it comes to meetings, I'm very big on you gotta have 3 things before you even start the meeting. What's the bottom line up front? What are we getting to? Can you explain to me what you wanna have at the end of this in, a very keep it simple way? And then, so what? Why do I care? If I don't care, why am I in this meeting? So, I mean, that may be a little bit harsh, a little bit blunt, but if you can't explain to each stakeholder why they're there, why they have a so what, you're wasting time. And then it ends up being meetings that are just talk sessions. Okay, good 60-minute talk. We'll meet again next week. Why?
Yeah. I've I've written about this, and I've actually had on guests who talked about the guest list for meetings, and if you actually take the blended rate per, job title, and then you figure out how much your meeting is costing for that hour, people start to back away real quick when you start saying that we could turn this $10,000 meeting into a $5,000 meeting if you don't need to be there.
That is a great point. I've never used that as leverage to try to, keep the meeting to the audience that actually needs to be. I'm going to use that one.
Yeah, I mean, the blended rate works, and then also the badge of honor of my day is wall to wall meetings. Okay, well, great, but what are you doing? How are you getting all your admin work done?
And those are miserable days. When you have full meetings all day, you've also lost your ability. So something we learned when I was an instructor was you literally can only keep adults focused for 50 minutes at a time. If they're not actively engaged, they're not a part of what's going on. And how many people really talk during that meeting? If you have 30 people in a meeting, 5, maybe 6, and
That's
everybody else
being
is just sitting there.
that's being
Yeah, it is true. That is very true. Yeah, that's 1 to 3 more than likely most of the time, and everybody else is just sitting there, either thinking about something else, not paying much attention, and they're just gonna read the notes, especially with the way AI is now. Pretty much every meeting you're on is gonna have a note taker. You're probably gonna have your own personal note taker, whatever it is. So if you don't feel actively engaged, what are you gonna do? Yeah, I'll just read the notes afterwards.
and that's a great point to bring up because as PMs, we've always been told, "Oh, you're the note taker." Well,
Mhm.
I can't run a meeting and take notes at the same time, so we assign a scribe or a note taker for that. And how often have you gotten the notes back from a meeting and you're just like, "What is this?"
Actually, one of my favorite exercises that I'm still doing right now. So we have a PM intern that we have that she's going through the process, and that's one of the things is we're not putting her through the ringer. We want to make it very educational. But like, you will take handwritten notes or typed notes because that is a pain point to where if the technology fails you,
Mhm.
you need to know how to take quick notes in a meeting. So what I'll do is I'll take her notes and compare them against the notes that my automated AI takes. And sometimes she captures things that it misses, but most of the time it'll get a little bit better explanation because it's able to pick up on everyone's voices and not try to quickly shorthand. The shorthand is hers is great, but I've had some people where I'm like, I don't read your handwriting very well. I don't know what this code means. Can you please explain it to me? And then it becomes more painful than if I'm just trying to remember it from my own memory as I go through.
Well, and that's a great point too is, what's the critical point is the wrap up at the end of the meeting where we go over decisions made, next steps, all that. And the human ear and the human mind is interpretation, but if it's a transcript, it's literally what was said.
Which
And
makes it so much better. It
yeah,
really.
and if there's a discussion over, "Oh, well, we said Steve is going to do it, and then Steve passed it off to John." Well, that's in the transcript versus the note taker writing down Steve, scratching out, and then writing John, and the confusion that can create.
Yeah, I mean, it can be an absolute nightmare. I don't miss paper notes. I mean, the first time I had Copilot take notes in a meeting, I'm like, I can't go back. Like, you can have it as a backup or, just in case, but the ability for it to basically pull all of your end items, to pull the entire summary, give you action items, who's assigned, at what minute they said this, so you can go back in the recording and say, yep, you said this. It's just top notch.
Yeah, and I also anytime AI comes up with corporate structures, I always make the disclaimer that you got to consult your company's AI policies because you mentioned using that tool. I was talking to a friend of mine and he got back from vacation and he had like 400, he said he had 400 unread emails. And I was like, "Oh, have fun taking care of that. Have fun catching up on that all week." He's like, "No, no, it'll be done in 20 minutes. I'll use AI to take care of it." And then I
Mhm.
and then I kind of made that exact same reaction through message. I was like, "Make sure you approve that with your company." And he's like, "Oh, we have this tool built into our system and it's air gapped." And I was like, "Cool. Still make sure you consult the policy." He's like, "I wrote the policy."
So he feels comfortable then. He's ready to go.
Yeah, but I mean, it was just the idea that when when you have those kinds of answers, it shows preparation versus
Oh,
just,
yeah.
"Hey, I'm winging this thing."
Which is very dangerous. In the AI world, that gets a lot of people in trouble. I'm just going to drop it into AI. Well, what kind of AI are you using? Are you using a learned language model, using machine learning? Or is it, protected? Does it have any kind of security in place to keep your information protected? Or did you just drop in your company's confidential
Mhm.
information into now an open source learned language model?
Yeah, and the thing that I'm learning too as I use AI is certain tools build everything around they learned how you speak, how you write, so if you mix your personal language with work language, you get a very interesting mixed bag.
That you do. I mean, I've had so and everybody I think at this point is using it to automate, standard email responses or, basic information that you send. And I've run into that issue too, where I'm like, this is how I write personally, this is how I write professionally. And if you don't open the right window, you're like, oh, I can't send that. Like, absolutely.
Or there's you start the what is it? The meme of the email where it says, "I regret to inform you that I'm no longer willing to accept this, blah, blah, blah." It's like a whole formal email. And then when you send it, it's the autofill only sends, "I regret to inform you." And that's it.
Yeah. Gosh, well, that's the email servers now trying to suggest, hey, we can update, we'll edit this with AI. Those are, I've all been terrible. When I've let the email system do it itself, it's just bad.
Well, and you bring up an interesting point about AI itself that everyone's focused on AI right now as the next great thing. But what everyone's forgetting is we've seen this all before. And if you're automating it, that's great. But if you're automating a terrible process, you're just automating a terrible process.
One of my favorite gotchas, and I actually it originally got it from my brother-in-law, and I've started using it, is M dashes are huge in AI. They
Oh,
love M dashes. Do you know how to make an M dash on a keyboard? I didn't until he told me, as I've never used them. I'm not in finance. It's mostly a finance thing. So anytime I see an M dash in someone's response, I said, "Oh, cool. I love the M dash. How do you do that on a keyboard?" And then they're like,
I know, but I shouldn't tell the audience.
it can't give away the secret. That's how you know. I mean, and that's what it's funny. You dance around the line where I've had some people that, work with that work for me. They feel like, oh, I don't want to use AI because then I'm not doing the work. And I said, no, absolutely use AI, then QC it. Make sure that it's
Yep.
quality, it works for what we need because it will put out a lot of garbage or it'll misinterpret one thing that you say and it runs with that. And all of a sudden, your entire projection is completely off. So definitely want to use it, but quality control it and don't act like you're not using it. That's the other funny one. I've asked people, did you use AI for this? No. I'm like, okay, well, it's got M dashes, it's got section spaces, it's the lines that come in between there. It's got all of the classic AI signs. There's nothing wrong with using AI to do this. Just admit you're using it and quality control it.
Well, I say AI is, to take it to project management, everyone's terrified of AI in the project management world. And I've said, we were all terrified when all the PPM tools started first coming out. Project was the revolution where everyone was like, yes, we needed this. And then all the other all-in-one tools started coming out. And that's when everyone started saying, oh, this is going to replace PMs. Well, it only replaced the bad PMs.
No, absolutely. I agree with that. I'm sorry, I got my wonderful cuckoo clock going off here. But Project, getting me on that subject, that's a whole soapbox. I despise Microsoft Project for how complex it is to use, and it's not for everyone. So I've had certain, groups talk to me like, "Oh, isn't what do you think of Project?" It's great if you work in certain industries and have certain constraints. It is not a one size fits all project solution, but neither are any of the others. No, I don't want to name every product
Yep.
out there, but insert whatever product. It does really great at this. It's not great at that. You have to find what works for your company.
And not only that, but you have to use it. I was a part of an implementation of a major tool at one organization, went to a different organization, they had it, and I was like, I just helped implement this somewhere else. And I found out that all they were using it for was for resource tracking. And I was like, do you want some help here?
There's cheaper software for that probably.
And this was a multi-million-dollar tool. Yeah. I mean, and we see it everywhere. And to your point about the AI piece, like, don't lie that you're using it because it's great to cut down on first drafts.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I use it all the time to save myself an hour on writing a first draft of something for professional stuff. And then I can QC it and edit it. And sometimes it gives me ideas for formatting and different things that I've never even thought of.
It definitely does. I mean, I had one boss that said it gets you the 80% solution
Hmm.
that you need to fill in the other 20. If you turn in an 80% solution in school, it's not going to turn out well for you, would it? It's not going to turn out better at work.
Yeah. That's like saying as PMs, we never search the internet for a template for a tool, for a specific thing before we start using, before we start modifying it and using it.
I'd had to tell somebody not too long ago, if you're building a template from scratch in Excel or Word or, whatever, pick your poison if you like Google better. But if you're building that from scratch, you're probably doing something wrong. There are so many templates out there that you
Mhm.
can start from and then adapt it to what you want. You should not start from zero.
Yeah. And even with, you know, even with the tools that are out there, you can give AI a pretty good description of what you're looking for in a template. And like you said, it'll get you 80% there.
There's definitely people who lean into only one of the AI systems, you're missing out. Every single one has a different thing that is better than the others. And I mean, I won't name brands, but
Hmm.
this one is much better at actually remembering your conversations and pulling things up later. This one's much better at presenting professional optics, and other ones are good at images. So if you're just using one for everything, you're missing out on the whole movement of what it can bring.
Yeah. I mean, just this morning I was working on something and I was trying to fine tune an idea, put it into one, spit something out, put it into a different one, said, tell me what you think about this. And then I went back and forth until I finally landed on what I wanted, but it took 3 or 4 iterations to get it where I wanted to. And then in between those 2, I'm still looking at it going, let's change this, let's change that, and detail it. And that was all done in the span of maybe an hour. But think about how long that would have taken to just write out
Mhm.
the initial idea of it. And then how many people I probably would have had to bounce those ideas off of before they got tired of me asking, "What do you think about this?" and then tell me to shut up and go away.
I mean, it would have taken, it takes forever. And I mean, I am not a design person by any means. That is not my strong suit. My wife will tell you that. I have no sense of fashion or color coordination at all. But the fact is, I can tell the AI, this is what I want something to look like. It gives
Mhm.
me examples. And then if I would have tried to build that myself, whatever tool, Canva or whatever else, that would have taken me hours. Now it takes me minutes.
And the other thing that I always tell people is sometimes it gives you ideas you didn't even think of. Like I joke about this all the time that I remember back when I wrote my post about this is going back about a year ago. I wrote a post about leaders eat last using military language.
Yep.
And I thought about it. I was like, told the AI, I wanted a line of people with the person at the end bigger. All of a sudden, it turned out exactly what I asked for, but the last person was a dinosaur, and I was just like, "That's amazing!"
Yeah, it worked out really well. I didn't even know you wanted it.
Exactly, and I think that that's the part about this whole process that we forget is that's that's what it's there for is to help you ideate. Can't get that word right.
It's a Tuesday. It's rough.
Yeah, every day is rough in my world.
Understand that completely. And something with the AI thing, and you talk to people, they're afraid of it. A lot of people are still afraid of it. It's just like you mentioned earlier, it's just the next thing. There's always going to be something else that's new on the horizon, scary for some. Change can be scary. But if you're not embracing the change, you're going to get crushed by it.
Yeah, and I think that's a great place for us to pause and to share about the Patreon that I have because that's where you can support the show as a listener. The Patreon has two tiers. The main tier is the $5 a month, and that's where you get access to the postmortem interviews where every guest, including Casey, which did I tell you about that earlier? That you were
No.
doing this? Okay, have fun. Then you get to hear about it now. Is we do a bonus conversation where I dive deeper into their expertise. And we're going to be talking about people first leadership and some of the ways to leverage AI specifically in project management. And the goal is to give you actionable tips that you can use today rather than just the generic conversation that we're having right now. So with that, let's kind of switch gears because we've talked a lot about AI, but one of the things I know that you're passionate about is you've kind of coined a new term that you're trying to see if fetch will be a thing in the industry. And you want to tell the audience about that?
So we're trying to make project management as a service a thing. That's what we're really trying to push out there. It's not consulting, it's not traditional hiring. It's bringing in fractional experts when you need them, but it's a different model than a staffing. So literally, I don't want to talk in circles about it. Feel free to interrupt me at some point, but trying to get the point through to people because I'm like, oh, we do this. Oh, you're a staffing agency. No, you do this. No, we're not consulting. So project management as a service is basically being able to leverage people's expertise that they already have, but only plug them in for what's needed. So it's not a W-2 type employee position. It's usually a 1099 contractor or part time. Because as we talked about in a previous conversation we've had, project managers being full time assets is not really great for the PM or great for the organization. It causes all kinds of issues.
Well, I think I would push back on that a little bit that I think that certain organizations need full-time PMs
Mhm.
for what they're doing. But as a general rule, not every organization needs a PMO full of PMs if they're not mature enough to have a mature PMO.
Yes, because the worst thing, and the reason I really liked the idea of PMOS and wanted to run with it is because there's nothing worse than having to let people go. If you've ever been in a position where you have to lay off personnel, it's horrible for you. It's horrible for them, obviously, the most. That's the person who's getting affected the most. But a PM is embedded in the entire organization. They know the accounting people, they know the sales people, they know the C suite, they know the tech team, they know everybody. And how do people get laid off? It's not, okay, I'm leaving in 2 weeks. Have a nice time. It's great to work with everybody. It's they're there on a Monday afternoon. They're not there Tuesday morning and they're just
Heck,
gone.
they might not even be there Monday afternoon.
Very true. Yeah, there's just thank you for your time and mail back your computer. It's very quick, very, one shot to the head. It's I guess there's not an easier way to do it. I mean, I've not come up with a better way to do it yet, but it basically kills the team. And you hired this person to do a project. If you don't have a large pipeline, like you were talking about, there are companies with pipelines that never end. That, yeah, you have one project after another. You can continue to jump on. Most small to mid market growth companies are not that way. You're going to have, a surge here, a lull there. And what happens when you go into a lull? Well, we need to cut costs. Where can we cut costs? We don't have projects. Let's cut the PMs. So you're bringing them in, causing, I hate the phrase, it's not personal, it's business. That's a one sided viewpoint of what just happened. When you affect somebody's income and their family, that is very personal. Now, for you as the person doing the layoffs or the company, and that's something I guess maybe we'll talk about a little bit later. To me, it is personal. It should be personal for you too, or you should not be in a leadership position. You should feel the weight of that decision very heavily on you. But it's personal. So the fact that you're bringing people in, having the whole time of onboarding them, getting them integrated, making them part of the team just to be like, and we don't care anymore. We can't keep you because of whatever reason, even if it's legitimate dollar value, then it's not the right model. Why not just bring people in for what you need? There's no illusion that there's follow on work. There can be, and you can renew the contract. But when you bring in a PMOS asset, hey, we're going to bring you on for this 12-month contract. When the 12 months is over, you hand us back all of the items that you built, and we all shake hands and go along our way. There's no misconception there.
And one thing I like about that is there's a, I'm going to be going into this later on. There's one thing I like about that is that there's an ongoing, I'll call it an epidemic of people becoming consultants after they're laid off. And a consultant is a specific set of skills, not just, oh, I'm an SME in something, so I'm a consultant now.
They think so, though.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a complicated thing because just like with project management, people spend their whole careers being consultants. And there's just like we say, everyone's a PM and we get so frustrated by that. I'm sure consultants are even more upset because everyone says, I'm a consultant now. And they have no idea what an actual consultant is supposed to be doing.
They absolutely don't. That's where I always try to bring up, we're not consultants. We're not here from, on high to advise and give you the right amount of information and that kind of technique. That's not what we're doing. We're giving you somebody who's coming in to execute for your team. And that's the difference. Consultants are great. We've all worked with
Mhm.
consultants, but they have limitations, I guess. You have to understand that they're not always there with your best interest in mind, depending what company you work with, or depending if you bring in an independent, and they're all various and different.
And they're not supposed to come up with the answers for you,
Hmm.
which
Yeah.
is a common misconception. They're not executors.
Advisors. That's what you always have to tell people. A
Exactly.
consultant is an advisor. And that's what used to drive me nuts. One of the companies I worked with is they would be like, oh, we're bringing in consultants to execute this project. I'm like, that's not how this works, guys. That's not it at all. That's not what they're supposed to do.
I always think of the Bobs from Office Space.
Yes. Oh, I love that movie.
That is the quintessential consultant.
Yep. We're here. All right.
Yeah,
Best of luck with your layoffs.
exactly. Going right back to what you just said.
It all comes full circle.
It always does. So with that, let's kind of talk a little bit more about something that you sent to me. And it's a concept that you sent that I'm really kind of curious about. And that was step out, go for what you want, and take that chance.
Oh goodness. Yeah. That is a
Actually,
whole series of stuff.
actually, that's something you wrote about, not something you sent me, because I do my homework.
Oh man, I'm impressed. I was about to say, that sounds like thoughts for Thursday last week.
Yeah. So why don't you talk a little bit more about that?
So, without going into too many details, this is not an advertisement, but the overall of what's going on. The company I mentioned, Constructive Curiosity, we're going through a major change right now, and the whole company in and of itself was a risk. I started off as a consulting company and then decided to pivot it into something else. But we've reached a point where I have to take a major risk. This is going to alter basically what my life's path will be from here, and that is terrifying. It 100% is. But it's are you willing to jump? And I mean, there's a million people that have used the term. I can't remember. It might have been Tony Robbins that did it first. But are you willing to burn your boats? Are you willing to go all in? Because if you burn the boats, you will take the island. And that's kind of where we're at right now. So we want to make sure as we transition from the kind of company we've been into this new model, we want to make sure that we're all in. And it's worth it because there's nothing I would regret more on my deathbed than looking back and going, well, you played it safe and you skated by. and you've lived an average life, even if this doesn't work for whatever reason, I will never have to wonder. So I think everyone should do that. There's moments of greatness that can come up to you in your life. And if you don't recognize them, you're not willing to go for them, you're missing out. And the weight of the regret is going to hold you down a lot more than the weight of the failure. Because if you fail, you can keep trying and keep trying.
Well, let me throw a little bit of a counter argument to that. And that is that some people don't have the, I don't want to call it a luxury because that's a bad choice of words, but the ability to take that risk and need to play it safe for the greater good, because I always, when I mentor people, I always tell them, make me an order of merit list of what's important to you in your
Okay.
life. And when I see that list is when I know how to direct the person, because if you say your family is the most important thing, but then all you talk about is, I want to make more money, well, then that's not the most important thing. But if your talk matches your list, then it's okay, well, how do we go there and how do we get where you need to be?
No, that's a great counterpoint. And everybody's life is an individual journey. That's something that people need to realize. And I think my oldest daughter will tell you that's probably our family motto is different strokes for different folks. You don't judge what somebody else values and don't worry about what they think about what you value. It's not it's not a contest between us. Everybody has different things that they go after. But I will also counterpoint your counterpoint here. So you can fail at doing what you don't want to do, trying to play it safe.
Hmm.
So if you do feel a calling, you should definitely try to go for it. And it is scary. I mean, the luxury aspect is a common misconception, I think, because you think your job is safe till it's not. But you never got laid off until you do. And that fear in that cycle, when you don't have a position, when you're trying to find something, nobody's hiring. The political scene or, the world scene or whatever it is, something's going on and it's preventing you from finding the right position or, there's 10,000 applicants. If anybody ever looks on LinkedIn, if you see more than 100 applicants, do not apply. The algorithm's already pulled everybody they want to, and if they want to repost it, they will if they want fresh candidates. So basically, it's a very cutthroat world out there. So when you think about it, if family, and like I said, and this is just my personal situation,
Hmm.
family is the most important thing to me. And the reason why I work as hard as I do is because I don't want my kids to have to stress the way I've had to stress. I want to build a legacy and a wall around them to where they're able to live the lives that they want to live and have the financial freedom. That is a dream that I think people in our age and our generation, you start to think about more than our parents did, because our parents, you could work the same 9 to 5 job for 20, 30, 40 years, retire with a pension. Housing, it was expensive for them at the time compared to, generation past. That's kind of how inflation works. But it was a different time where now to get the same level of living that our parents had, we have to work significantly harder, which made me wonder how much harder are my kids going to have to work to just have what I have now. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Well, I'll throw a caveat on your application rule, and that is if you know someone who's referring you,
Yes.
don't even let those numbers blink at you, because
True.
if you have an internal advocate, that allows you to bypass a lot of those applications, because you can get that application put on somebody's that resume put on somebody's desk rather than just going through the process,
Great caveat. And that is 100% true.
which that's a whole nother conversation about ways that I think people miss the boat is through networking and well, I hate networking. I say relationship building because that's how we
Yeah.
met, is through a cold message on LinkedIn, I think. And that's how most of these conversations start, is through a message that you respond to.
And and that gets me on a slight tangent here, so pull me back as soon as you want me to. But I go to coffee and co-work events and different things like that. Nothing drives me more insane than you go to an event like that to sit on your laptop with your headphones in a corner. Maybe I'm just a different beast. If I want to get work done and be locked in, I'll just stay in the home office. If I go to a location, I want to talk to people. I want to meet people. And that's kind of what I do. I'm like, hey, would you like to have a conversation? Some people, yes, some people, no. But it always makes me wonder, why did you come to a venue, which I mean, it's nice places, they're good co-work spaces, but why would you come here to sit all day? Yeah, if you have a meeting or two, sure, but you're sitting all day not meeting anyone.
I'll challenge that point with maybe that person spends all day in their basement like me all day working, and then they get the opportunity to go work somewhere else just to get a change of scenery. So they want that change of scenery, not necessarily to meet new people.
That is true, and that is a point I've gotten from a few people when I've talked to them. It's just I said, again, different strokes for different
Yeah.
folks.
I mean, it going back to it, they're not called all the times for a reason. And what I always joke about is, and I'm guilty of this just as much as the next person is, I'll go to a social event, whether it's a PMI chapter meeting or something else, and I find myself talking to the same handful of people I talk to every month, and I ignore half the room, which are new people that I've never talked to.
Yep. It's that is a natural human instinct, though. You go back to what's comfortable, what's safe, what makes you feel, you know, keeps the status quo ready.
Yeah. So I think now is a great time for us to get to the personalized question. So every guest gets one, and I will ask you this. Is it true that a helicopter is actually, I don't know how many sets of individual pieces flying in sequence, or is it actually one piece of equipment?
I say, I'm going to answer that with its magic. That's the anytime I try to explain how a helicopter flies to people, at some point you just see them gloss over, and I just say magic. So,
Yeah.
because there are so many parts and pieces that wear each other down. I mean, I've seen so many crazy almost accidents, and unfortunately, I've seen a few accidents from just one little thing being off. You didn't torque something to this perfect part and this little tiny screw and this one component, and then all of a sudden the entire aircraft has a catastrophic failure.
Yeah, like I remember I was approached at one point in my career by somebody who was trying to recruit me to go be a door gunner on a Chinook, which is
Oh,
a big those big two-blade helicopters. For the audience doesn't know what that is. I was approached to be one of those, and I was talking with the person, and he said, "Whatever you decide, I will tell you this up front. When you get there, if you decide to do this, whenever you get there, if the helicopter is leaking, that means it's full of fluid, and that's a good thing."
that is true. Keep the greasy side down. Chinooks were always interesting. So I've ridden in a few. I never flew one. I was a Black Hawk Kiowa guy, but ridden in a few. But one of the videos they show you in flight school is a Chinook getting what's called ground resonance. So it'll literally be on the ground, and a certain vibration in the rotors will start to cause the aircraft to shake apart. And it will literally just break. You saw the engine fly this way, cowlings go that way. You're like, oh, that's terrifying. It just shakes itself apart.
I'm really happy I no longer fly in them after hearing that story.
You have to be playing for so it can happen in any aircraft.
Yeah.
So you'd feel it actually. The longer you're a pilot, you can start to feel like, okay, it's starting to vibrate in a way that's not acceptable. I should probably either pull more power, let some power out, do something to make this not happen.
Well, and I think that's a great way to describe project management in a lot of ways. I can feel when something is off and I need to change that.
Yeah, we need to tweak this a little bit, just add a little power.
Yeah. So so why don't I turn the floor over to you, let the audience know where they can find you, what you're up to, all that great stuff.
No, absolutely. So thank you for that. So you can find us basically everywhere on the web at Constructive Curiosity, constructivecuriosity.com. But I'm going to do a very quick pivot because we've broken off into two companies now. It is two separate companies. Constructive Curiosity will continue to do our PMOS. So if you were interested in that idea, feel free to reach out. We can talk about that in more depth and see what PMOS can do for you. But we've also moved into Spec-C Technologies Inc. So that is our project management software that incorporates predictive metrics, integrated time tracking, and my latest and greatest thing that I really enjoy about it is an integrated planning tool. Because Trevor, I think you can agree with me on that. Most of your PM tools don't let you plan. There's like, here you go, build some tasks. So this walks you through an entire planning process, gets you from your initial idea all the way through to completed sprints that can then be pulled back into the system. So check that out at spec-c. And then there'll be lots of more information coming out. Follow me on LinkedIn, r period Casey Sprague, and then from there you'll be able to get everything we have.
Yeah, I'll have links for all that in the show notes. So actually, I want to ask you a little bit about that software just because I'm curious now. So what separates your tool from, we'll just call it the industry leaders that we all know?
The biggest thing is our MVP is their finished product. That's the biggest way I try to look at it. So I've used everything. I don't want to name drop other brands because that's not professional, but I've used it all. If you can name a PM software, and I have been frustrated to no end by each one of them for one reason or another, either weak reporting or I could have built this in Excel or insert whatever other comments you have. So I'm like, what do I want as a PM? What is actually going to work for a PM software? And the biggest things that make us different is predictive reporting. So our reporting module for MVP, not quite where I want it yet, but we're going to get there, with earned value management, actual predictive items. So we have a machine learning tool called Scout. So what Scout does is basically it'll be able to predict the future of what your implementation looks like. It can call out your risk through our AI, which is ACE, which is, I'm not going to lie, if you build a pure AI system, you're wasting a lot of your time. You can piggyback it off of something that's already out there for a learned language model. But the predictive system is custom built. So Scout learning, the learn machine learning is custom built. It's going to be able to predict what's going on. And then the planning tool that I was talking about is actually our methodology, which is Sprague. Yes, make fun of me. I incorporated my last name, but it was kind of fun and it worked out really well. And it plays into what the methodology does. And it walks you step by step. And everyone that I've talked to, fellow PMs, people in the industry, they've all been wowed by that, saying nobody else thinks about planning. They just think about executing. So that's where we really want to start with the end in mind, have a plan ready, and get you to that right step. So it's really a project management software and execution management software as opposed to a task tracker.
Man, I'm a little hurt. You said you've talked to industry experts. I guess does that put me where my standing is in the industry?
No, you're one of this is the first time I've talked to you in like a little while. I have a standing call with a couple of the others. So we got to get on a standing call every month.
Sounds good. So I think that's a great place for us to wrap. I want to thank, most importantly, the Patreon subscribers and the listeners. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow in all the major platforms. That's how I spread this out and make this better and bigger than it is now. And it's also free to do, so it's the best value in town. And I'll end like I always do. May all your deliverables be on time, your budget's in the black, and your scope not creeping. For Casey Sprague, I'm still Trevor, and I'm still the disgruntled PM. Thanks for listening.